Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rodtang Jitmuangnon special. I have enjoyed researching this immensely. It has been an absolute pleasure to watch this man's back catalogue and his career, and just to see how much of an incredible fighter he is. I mean, I've probably watched his back catalogue, his one fight. So he's had 10 fights in one. I probably watched that back catalogue 4 times through in order, and each time I would see new things that he was doing, new tricks that he would use. I mean, he's such a veteran of the fight game, which is crazy considering he's 23 years old. So a bit of background of him. He had his first fight when he was 8 years old, moved to Bangkok when he was 14 to join the Jitmuangnon gym. And at the time when he signed with One, which was 2018, his record was, I'll read this out to you twice, 250, 40, and 10 is his professional Muay Thai record, which is just incredible. It's a massive amount of experience. And as we go through the show, I'll be reading out the records of his opponents, and there are very few fighters that he's faced that have rivaled his record. One thing that is worth saying, though, say someone like Jonathan Haggarty, for example, his record is 17-4. A lot of his fights were amateur, so they were unpaid, so they weren't counted towards his professional career. So Rodtang learned on the job. He was a professional at 8 years old because he was making money for his family. So it's a very different, very culturally a very different approach to the sport. But what it gives Rodtang is an immense amount of experience with lots of different body types, different arenas, different paces, and the other thing as well with the fight game, and one thing that makes you a veteran of the fight game, in my opinion, is understanding that you have to be adaptable in the moment, because, and this is not only fight time, this is, you might show up to the venue and there's an issue with the venue, the roof's leaking into the ring, and, they need to move the ring over 3 feet, so the show's delayed by 4 hours. I mean, these are the kind of crazy things that you would deal with on smaller level shows. So when Rodtang, over his 300 fight career on his way to One, has probably fought in all manner of different arenas. So then when he steps into One, and he's in the circle and he's able to show his skills, he can really just enjoy himself and really show people the amount of experience that he's gathered over the years. So in this show, I'm going to focus specifically on his fights in One, but he's a very active fighter. He's all over the place, and go back before his One career as well, just to see how he's built his game. But we are really seeing the best of his fights in these last few. He has looked absolutely spectacular. Okay, let's start with his One debut. 22nd of September 2018. He was facing a fighter called Sergio Wilson, who was a very, very awkward fighter, very springy, very rangy, very difficult to predict. A record of 60, 19, and 2 with 24 knockouts. So you're looking at, we're looking at between the third and a half of his fights of he's scored knockouts in. A dangerous fighter. I watched some of his back catalogue as well. He's a very skilled individual. And you could see for the first couple of minutes, it was kind of difficult for Rodtang to figure out what was going on, because he doesn't move in a rhythm that would have been familiar to Rodtang in a lot of ways. Especially in the first round, like the Muay Thai rhythm is quite consistent. Now, this was the turning point for me. And it wasn't a turning point in the fight technically, but it was a turning point in the mood of Rodtang. He's a very fiery individual, and that feeds into his fighting style, which is one of the reasons why he's so exciting. So for the first 2 minutes of this fight, it was quite frustrating. He's trying to get his hands on this guy, and he's doing very unorthodox, unusual movements, not moving in a regular, consistent rhythm that Rodtang's working with. So he's a bit uneasy, especially, this is his debut. It may well have been the first time he's fought in a circle as well, which, it does change things for a Thai boxer when they're used to wedging somebody in a corner, especially a high-pressure fighter like Rodtang. So there's a bit of an entanglement here. Lovely catch there to the body shot. And in this entanglement, there's a trip, something Rodtang uses a lot, a really nice technique where he just times it perfectly. He skips through. See how he switches his feet there? Skips through and then pulls his opponent. And because Wilson's got such a clamp on the upper body here, Rodtang's able to control his upper body without really grasping onto him himself. sweeps that lead leg and knocks him right over to the floor. But the thing that annoys Rodtang for me is as they land, you can see Wilson's got a real tight lock on this arm. You can see it's almost an armbar position. It's a straight arm lock position. And it would have hyperextended Rodtang's arm, which would have been very painful. Which is just, obviously, this is, all's fair in love and war, but it's a bit of an unsportsmanlike thing to do in Muay Thai, I would think. And I would imagine that is something that would have irked Rodtang to an extent. And you can kind of see that when he gets up, like you can see how that's like Wilson's clamping onto that and really trying to keep a hold of the arm as Rodtang's trying to get out. It's, gamesmanship and all that. But Rodtang gets, and you can see now he's annoyed. And the referees, there's some tension between Rodtang and the referee's hand because he's trying to get back to Wilson. And then he starts doing this. He starts catching the foot and following in with those body kicks. But as always with Rodtang's fights, the left hook lands, and left hook lands consistently in Rodtang fights. And he's got a few different ones that he uses depending on, where is the entanglement? There we go. He's got a few different left hooks that he uses depending on the range and the position and the style of his opponent. But this one was a palm down, cracks him with those front two knuckles right on the top side of the head. You'll see it. Look at this kick catch. Kick catch. Keeps a hold of it and drags himself into range to throw a body shot. Lovely work. So here we go. Here's the shot. Now, Wilson's going to turn around. He's a little bit staggered from that. And Rodtang's going to come straight over the lead arm. Cracks him right on the side of the head with those knuckles, and Wilson's legs are just gone. They just turn to noodles. And watch this. Bang. Right on the side of the temple. Really nice, clean left hook. And you can see how Rodtang talks his body into it as well. We're going to see this punch quite a lot throughout this show, and you'll see how there are different ways in which he applies it. There it is again. Cracks him right on the temple. And Wilson's there. He sees Rodtang coming. He's just can't keep his legs underneath him. Really nice debut for Rodtang. He went on to win a decision of that. He actually thought he'd won the fight. Got up on the cage. I've done it myself. But it was an awkward debut against someone that's really kind of springy and very good at closing distance and being unpredictable. And Rodtang he knocked him down clean in the first round, and then he shut him down for the rest of the fight. It was a unanimous decision for Rodtang, and a really, really impressive performance to start off his one career. So the next time we see him in one, this is now January of 2019, 25th of January 2019 in Manila. Another fight, 3 3-minute rounds. That's something I should have said before. 3 3-minute rounds he started off with, moving up to 5 threes. When he got to his title shot. So the next opponent's Fadi Khaled, who's another very dangerous fighter, 37-4 with 22 knockouts, a high percentage of knockouts. A fast-paced individual, 6-time Tunisian champion, really a really well-skilled fighter. The point of difference in this fight was pressure from Rodtang. Because a lot of these guys, they like to kind of stand at a range that Rodtang doesn't allow them to work at. And what you'll see in the early goings of a lot of Rodtang's fights is that he pressures people without really doing a great deal. He'll pick at people with one shot, but you can tell the purpose of this pressure is to make them work. Like this is Rodtang walking forward, being a good pad man. Like he's covering, he throws something back every now and then. But the purpose of this is to force his opponent to work, to make them feel uncomfortable. And that's exactly what he does with Khaled. He backs him up against the fence here, lands the left hook. Now this is a bit of an odd knockdown because he actually gets up. Look, he looks like he's all right. So Rodtang lands this left hook. Here's the left hook coming around the side. It's going to target the top side of Khaled's head. Cracks him right across the top side of the head. A very disorientating thing, and you can see his legs go in this position here. But because Rodtang's keeping a hold of him, it looks like there's some resistance. His legs are just gone here. And as Rodtang throws the kick, fortunately for Khaled, he was actually underneath the kick as it came over his head. So as he lands, he gets up and he looks fine as he's getting up. I'll play it through at regular speed. He looks fine as he's getting up, but then as soon as he's back on his feet, you can see that he's not there. The referee jumps in and starts giving him the count. And then the same thing here, just like his debut against Wilson, he starts walking forward and really pressuring. But, this is what people love about Rodtang fights is the intensity. But think about this, like now his opponent is under pressure. He's getting drilled with a bunch of shots. Same thing again. Look, catches the front kick because he's moving forward. He knows these guys are going to try and do something to keep him off. Khaled throws the front kick and he catches it, drags himself into range, throws a shot, and then beautiful left hook through the guard there as well. You can see it just kick his chin over to his shoulder. So now Khaled's rocked again. He staggers, he turns around, and then watch this Rodtang following him. Let me play this slow motion. Look at the intensity on his face. I mean, that's a ferocious individual who's now walking you down and letting you unload your best shots, whatever you want to throw, and he's just walking you down, and he peppers people with those body shots as well, which it's another exhausting attack that Rodtang uses. Just another dominant performance, and you start seeing these guys crack under pressure. You start seeing them doing panic things like this, where like Rodtang knows that he's now starting to break these guys, because look, as Rodtang comes in here, he throws a power shot over the top, but then Khaled clamps onto him and literally just kind of falls to the floor, basically pulls half guard. And this is not an MMA fight, but as they're getting up, you can see Rodtang's frustration here, because he knows that these guys, he knows that Khaled's not wanting to stand and trade with him now, and you'll see this a few times as well. And it's a real dominant psychology that Rodtang brings into his fights. We'll roll straight into the next one. He was back in the circle March 31st, 2019. This was in Tokyo, and this was against Hakeem Hamesh. His record's 17-13. It does him no justice. He's got 9 knockouts, but you can see he's got heavy hands. I've watched a couple of his older fights, and he's very sharp with his hands. And is a former WEC Muay Thai champion, a very talented individual as well. But this was a different approach from Rodtang, and you could tell, from going from the Wilson fight and from the Fadi Khaled fight, you could tell that he felt like he could take their shots. He could walk those guys down and pressure them. With Hakeem Hamesh, you could see there was a respect from Rodtang, but it was a respect for his hands, not for the rest of his game. So Rodtang he's got that pressure in mentality, but now he's going to start beating him up from the ground up. He starts kicking at his legs and keeping him away with that lead leg, keeps prodding him in the midsection. So Hakeem Hamesh can't really get into the fight, can't get close enough to really start working his hands. Every time he plants his foot, Rodtang's smashing his legs or poking him in the midsection with that front kick. And then when Rodtang starts feeling like he's broken him down a bit, then he starts hammering the arms. And this is something that we're seeing Canelo use a lot in boxing at the moment. He's actually attacking the weapons of his opponent instead of the targets on the body where you would normally work. Like constant kicks to the arms of Khaled, of Hakeem Hamesh, who just couldn't, he got exhausted. He couldn't keep returning. Look, here we go. Like, look at all the redness down the side of his arms. This is all from him taking those kicks to try and get into range to punch. And every time he stepped forward, Rodtang made him pay for it. It was either low kicks, jab to the midsection, and kicks to the arms. And he literally just beat him down from the ground up. Another really, really impressive performance. Now we're going to roll on to one of my favorite ones of his fights now. This is the fight that got him his title shot against Haggarty. And this is one of the few fighters on his record, let's just skip it back. This is one of the few fighters on his record that has a comparable record. So the fighter he's facing here is Sok T. This was May 10th, 2019. So we're talking a few weeks, not really long between these fights. He's staying very active. Sok T's record is 221-36. So still not quite as many as Rodtang, but comparable. He's up there as far as experience goes. This was Rodtang's first stoppage in one, and it was quite terrifying, to be honest, if you're in his weight class, because you look at this and you're like, I don't really know exactly what I would do to hold him off. Even in the Haggarty fight, when we saw Haggarty able to keep him at range for a while with that beautiful teep and jab game that he's got, he still ends up getting there in the end. Like the tide comes in and Rodtang is riding it. He gets in, he gets underneath you, he gets around you, and he starts beating you up. And unfortunately for Sok T, the pace that Rodtang came out in this fight at was just far too much for him. And it's actually inspired some training sessions of mine recently. I've been working to this pace because it's almost like Rodtang's got a metronome in his head. And if these rounds are 3 minutes long and there's a shot every 2 seconds, that's 90 shots per round. But Rodtang doesn't care how many of those he needs to throw to meet that 90 count. It's just he's got this ticker in his mind where those 90 shots have got to land. And I'm not saying this is accurate as far as numbers. It's more of a representation of the pace that he sets, like this tick, tick, tick. It's like every other second there's a shot. And like I said, if there's 90 shots in a round and it's 45 apiece, it's an even round. But if his opponent throws 35, Rodtang will make up the extra 10 shots that he's not throwing. So if you only throw 5 shots in a round, Rodtang's going to eat you up with 85 shots. Watch what I'm talking about here, because I've actually started doing bag work sessions with this pace. You always feel like right at the point where Socrates about to do something, he gets interrupted. And also you feel there are some moments where Rodtang's like, it's your turn to throw, and nothing comes back, so Rodtang goes again. Watch what I'm talking about. This consistent pace, outside kick, teep, return from Socti, who, again, is a very talented fighter. It just makes Rodtang's performance even more impressive. But the pace again. That was the point where Socti should have gone and he didn't. So Rodtang went. And again, look, it's almost like there's a pace. It's like, it's your turn. But then as Rodtang started to slowly eat up that lead leg and he started to get these reactions from Socti, then now Rodtang's got a game that he's working towards. And the game is to just beat that lead leg up. Even if he doesn't get the finish with it, it's a target which will distract Socti from all of the things that Rodtang's attacking. And this is what we see, this kind of buzzsaw attack. He's not just recklessly going in and just smashing as many kicks as he can to that leg. You can see how much variety in the attack he's got. And I've said this to a few of our young fighters recently as well. If you're hurting someone with a low kick, that pain is going to be there for the whole of the rest of the fight and for tomorrow and the day after. So there's no rush. If you land a low kick and you can see it hurts somebody, acknowledge it and recognize that's a target that's already vulnerable, because then you can feint it to open up other things. This is where Rodtang's experience starts to show through. Watch what I'm talking about. You'll see variety in his attacks. The finish in the second round is a better example, but you'll see every now and then. Watch Rodtang. Pay no attention to Socti. You'll see sometimes he'll twitch and he'll feint as if there's a shot coming. Like this, that was a good example of a really, like, there's a twitch there that gets the reaction. I'm pointing with my finger. It gets the reaction. You see how Socti's turned his knee out. He's expecting a low kick. But because Rodtang's not continually just drilling that kick over and over again, now he can't get the timing. Body shot, low kick. Let's quick get into the second round where he gets to finish, because this is brutal. And you'll see the feints much better here, because now he's really got Socti hurt. Oh, I mean, this is he's just tenderizing that leg. And if you've never been leg kicked, it's so difficult to understand exactly how that feels. But it's a combination of burning and numbness. Oh, and digging that body shot as well. Here's the feint. Lovely power shots. And again. Body shot. Uppercut. Just variety for days. You know, and there's nothing really complex about what he's doing. He's just not attacking one target like it's the only target on the human body. He acknowledges that that's now a target that's vulnerable, and then he'll start working that left hook to the head. Then he'll drop in the left hook to the body, so you're not sure whether you're going high or low, or am I blocking a body kick? Or he'll jam you in the midsection with that teep again, which he uses so much, which just knocks the wind out of you. So if you've already taken one of those body kicks and then he goes teep, then he's left hook and low kick, you can start to imagine how this begins to feel very overwhelming for his opponents. And they start to do things out of panic. They start to grab him and drag him to the floor, or, you know, like if he closes them down, they'll throw a kick and then fall over. And we'll see a bit more of this a bit later on. What we won't see is any of that from Haggarty in the next fight. So that fight was May of 2019. August 2nd of 2019, he had a title shot in Manila on a show called Dawn of Heroes. I love the One shows, by the way. They love the fact they've got names. It is, I mean, Conquest of Heroes, Warriors of Light, was a New Tomorrow. It's beautiful. I love it. Love it. It's stirring. So this one was Dawn of Heroes. Jonathan Haggarty, as I said, so he's 17-4 with 10 knockouts. A very, very talented fighter. Long-range Muay Thai, really nice rhythm to his attacks. Conditioning for days, a very, very difficult guy for Rodtang to deal with. ISKA and WBC Muay Thai champion as well. He had his first amateur fight when he was 12. So you can imagine that Haggarty's probably got maybe 100 fights experience in his amateur career as well, before he turned pro. So this was over 5 rounds. This was 5 3-minute rounds, and this seems to be a difference. So if the fights are 3 3-minute rounds, Rodtang starts at the pace that he would at the 3rd round of a 5-round fight. Like, it's almost like that first round is a little bit of a play. They kind of check each other out and, see what they can get, what reads they can get, poke a few, but with a few techniques, but not really invest in anything too much. And this is a very traditional Muay Thai pacing. You'll see this a lot. So it seemed to me like when Rodtang switched over to a 5-round fight against someone that's got a very typical Muay Thai style, he kind of fell back into that. And this was also switched over back into a ring as well, whereas all of his other previous fights in one have been in the circle, in the cage. So moving over into a ring, immediately it's like, oh, this is home. This is Muay Thai, 5 rounds, and he starts with a real steady pace. And I just don't think it worked out well for him in the early going, because obviously he won the fight, he got the belt, but in the early round, Haggarty was doing such a good job with the distance management, kept prodding him, used that lovely high knee feint to come in. But then Rodtang's it always gets to the stage where he just kind of bites down on his mouthpiece and he's like, right, okay, there's no point in me standing at the end of his striking range when pressure is going to slow that down and keep me safer. So then you see Rodtang really standing so close to him. But I have to reinstate how competitive this was. Not so much the rematch, and we'll get to that, but Haggarty's a skilled fighter, a very talented fighter, and he'd read Rodtang in ways that other fighters had not, in his one career so far. So in those moments where you see Rodtang and he's pressuring, and if you teep Rodtang to the midsection while he's pressuring you, he's going to grab that foot and he's going to drag himself into that straight right. But in this one, Haggarty nails him with a beautiful front kick to the face. Watch this. I'll play it slow motion. So he goes, where are we? Little circle off. Bang, right in the face. Because you can see Rodtang goes to catch it. He's expecting that to go to the midsection. It goes right clean to his face. But it's just, he just bounces back. It's like nothing affects him. And he still manages to catch the foot as it goes into the midsection and pulls himself into that body shot, which was a sign of things to come for the next fight. And he did hurt Haggarty to the body in this fight. And I think that was one of the main turning points. You'll see it in a moment. You can kind of see Haggarty starts to prioritize the covering of his ribs instead of his head. And he starts to try and tuck himself up. And because he's quite a tall individual, there's a lot of body for him to cover. It's clean shot to the side of the head there for Rodtang. Slips that shot. Lovely. And Haggarty just shifts his weight across onto his back foot and throws that kick up. And Rodtang just takes it clean on the neck. Punches himself in the face and does that little shoulder shake. Reminds me of Eddie Alvarez. And then he starts walking him down again. And this is the point where Haggarty now is starting to struggle with the pressure, because Rodtang's not giving him the space to express his weapons the way he wants to. Like pressure, left hook, low kick. Nice little slip jab there as well. Now Haggarty's now really trying to find space in a ring that's starting to feel smaller and smaller by the second. And then these buzzsaw attacks, which we'll see again later as well. Combinations of shots, jab, right hand, hook to the body, uppercut, and then hook to the head. The variety of targets that he's attacking, as well as the fact that he's not wildly swinging his arms. These aren't wasted shots. These are nice and tight and concise. And he's banging these into targets that are already vulnerable. Watch this. Bang, bang, bang. Lovely work. Let's watch it slow motion just so we can really fully appreciate it. Sorry, Jonathan. I am a big fan. I just want to celebrate Rodtang today. We'll get into some Haggarty stuff later. Lovely work. See how the variety... Haggarty's not got enough arm to cover himself. Again, lovely head kick, which Rodtang just eats like a cookie. He comes into the body with the straight right. He comes left hook to the head and then right hook to the head over the top. Really nice combination. Straight left hook, right hand. Bang, bang, bang. And you just can't keep this guy off you. He's just... You see how he walks forward and shrugs himself up. And there's something to be said for knowing that a shot is coming and bracing yourself. That's the body shot. See, it's the same thing again. And if you're a front kicker, if you've got a good teep like Haggarty has, Rodtang is always going to cause problems with you catching that and working his way into range with shots. And we've seen variety from this as well. It's not always the straight to the body from one stance or the other. He starts actually getting Haggarty around the sides here, around the ribs. Catches this, right? Look at that. Look how he catches it with his hand. So you're going to see... So we've got left hand cupping it right here. You're going to see the right hand come over. It's going to come over this side, inside the knee, almost to like shove it out the way as he steps in for the body shot. And the target he's aiming for is right in here, underneath the elbow. Watch this. Arm comes across. Catches it, arm comes across as he steps, and he digs that into the side. But you could, like, if you look at the position of Haggarty's elbows, you can see he was expecting a straight. You can see he was expecting something that was going to hit this target here. But instead, Rodtang has made the adjustment and come around the side. And now, now look at Haggarty's posture. I've spoke about this lots and lots of times before. You can recognize when someone's hurt to the body because their guard then is no longer prioritizing their most important thing. Now they start... bring their arms down. They try and bring their chin into their chest a bit more, make themselves smaller. But the priority is to try and cover the floating ribs, cover all these areas, that liver shot and all areas around here, which will force the air out of your lungs and confuse your diaphragm with what's going on. You feel like there's air in your lungs, but you know there's not because it's been punched out and you can't breathe. It's a horrible feeling. And it's the same principle as the low kick as well. If you hit somebody in the body in a fight, that is going to be there for the rest of the fight. They're going to be somewhat weakened. It might be 20%, might be 30%, but there's a weakness there to the body. And Rodtang doesn't chase after the same target like a dog on a bone. He goes, mixes it up, kicks, and it's a Muay Thai masterclass is what it is. I've just learned so much doing this research, and it's inspired some really fun training sessions and made life a lot more difficult for the fighters down the gym. Because we are pushing these boys now. I want all of these guys to have Rodtang pacing. It's just so overwhelming, and you can see the tension here. But you can also see on Haggarty's face, there was no confusion there. He knew he started well, but Rodtang, as always, he gets through to you. He reaches you at some point, and the longer the fights and the less space you have to move into, the better. And I also think Rodtang really likes a corner to put people in. So working in these circles is an interesting challenge for him. But, at 300 fights in your career, you're looking for new challenges. This is why he likes these MMA gloves fights. It's why, he's recently had a kickboxing match as well. Now he's into the kickboxing fights in one. Like, he'll be a multiple discipline champ. I mean, give him 6 months takedown defense. He's mean enough to really put that into effect straight away. You can just tell he's got that fight mentality. It wouldn't take much to turn him into an MMA fighter as well, which is pretty terrifying. Okay, so he beats Haggarty. Wins by unanimous decision, takes the belt. He is now the one Muay Thai champion. His next fight, his first defense, is October 13th of 2019. So he's back in there again. He's fighting Walter Gonçalves, who's 71-6 with 35 knockouts. This is another 5 5-minute rounds. And this is another guy who is coming in with loads of professional experience, who's a very difficult person to read, and he's a very frustrating fighter for Rodtang to face. And this was another really thin, razor-thin decision. Rodtang does enough, clearly, but there were certainly moments where you can see Walter kind of finding his ways in around Rodtang. It wouldn't surprise me if we see these guys face off again at some point in the future. I think because Rodtang's kind of cleaned out these guys and beaten them, everybody he's faced, it almost lessens how good the opposition is. Guys like Sok T and guys like Walter and obviously Haggarty and Daniel Williams, who he faced last. It almost devalues them because Rodtang just makes them look so like they can't deal with him. But in actuality, these are really good fighters, which is what makes it even more impressive. And Walter was a very tough first title defense. So let's just get into this. Again, like I said, it was a frustrating one for Rodtang because he didn't get the stand and bang fight that he wants. They're the ones he prefers. When he's got someone that's changing the range constantly and won't stay there to get hit or stand and catch and counter, which is more Rodtang's preferred style, he finds himself having to use back people up against the ropes, up against the fence. But he also uses a lot more psychology in these fights. I mean, we see him kind of grit his teeth and call people on when he's fighting in rings, but when he's fighting in the circle, you can tell there's more of a psychological game that he's playing. He's trying to entice these guys to come and face him because, come on, we're two small guys in a big space. There's no corners. I can't put you in a corner. So if you keep running away from me, we're not going to have the fight that I want. And you can tell that Rodtang wants a fight. And he's not really getting one out of Walter Gonçalves, which is frustrating for him, as I said. But again, he backs him up to the fence. You can see that Walter's feeling pressured. He fires out that lead leg to try and keep Rodtang off him. And then obviously he's now going to catch a punch for his troubles because that is Rodtang's habit. Catches the leg, pulls himself in with a big shot. But then once Rodtang's in range, of course he's not going to throw one shot. He follows up with a couple more. Bang, 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 and catches him with that third left hook. You can see how it snaps his head back. And you always know a good shot's landed because their guard comes up right after the fact. That's a bit late. It's already gotten through. Not quite out of it. Still gets his head out the way for the follow-up shot, but now Rodtang's like, come on, let's fight. Which is exactly the opposite of what Walter wants to do now, because he doesn't want to stand and feel that power from Rodtang. He doesn't want to deal with that blunt force trauma coming out of him. And now Rodtang switched. Oh, I love it. Like I say, I've so enjoyed this. Look at the psychology of this from Rodtang. He goes body kick, and then Walter comes back and he's like, yeah, whatever. You can tell that he's enjoying breaking these guys psychologically. You can tell when he sees Walter take that shot and there's a wince in his face. Rodtang's like, yes, I've got you. Watch here. Front kick doesn't keep him off. Bang, fight me. Big body kick, another big body kick, and that hurts him. He's like, oh yeah. and this is the point where Walter's now all he can do is back up and try and counter, it's never going to be as impressive unless you're really hurting your opponent. And it's so difficult to even seem to affect Rodtang with the clean shots that you land. Again, this is what I was talking about. I mean, it's gamesmanship, it's experience. Why stay on the feet and get blasted with a return shot? But Rodtang catches a kick, and Walter's like, nah, I'm going down. I'm getting out of the way of that return shot. And you can see Rodtang even level changes the punch to try and catch him on the way down. And he's gone. And then as he gets back up to his feet, Rodtang's like, yeah, I've got him. That grin on his face is like, you're done. I'm just going to keep walking you down here. Respect to Walter, though. He keeps his composure and he does what he can to stay in this fight. And it was a close fight. It was a split decision. But again, you just can't deny Rodtang's he's pressuring and he's eating these shots. So that's again where the psychological game comes into play, because you've got to think, there are people sitting circle side that are judging this fight. People that are trying to figure out how to divide this fight between these two guys who are quite clearly very evenly matched. The only major difference between the two guys in that fight is that Rodtang's moving forward, which was forcing Walter to move away. So Walter's really got to have some vicious force coming back in this direction to be really impactful, not only on Rodtang, but also on the judges. So Rodtang's got that psychological benefit of being the guy that's walking him down. And when you're a judge and you're sitting there and you watch Rodtang go, poof, and bounces off and shakes his head, poof, and shakes his head, and you're like, well, do I score it? I mean, did it hurt him? Even if it did, you would never be able to tell with Rodtang. He's learned at this stage that even if he was in pain, you're never ever going to see it, because the moment you show vulnerability is the moment you've presented your obvious target. We saw it with Sokti. He took too many low kicks. He starts to get timid with that lead leg, and Rodtang would never forgive him for it. He showed the weakness, and he made him pay for it. Another quick drink. Okay. So, first title defense is in the bag. He beats Walter Gonçalves by split decision. He's moving on now. January 10th, 2020. He has a rematch against Haggarty. This is in Bangkok, a new tomorrow. Another fantastic performance by Rodtang and a great effort by Haggarty. But this was a difference in approach from Rodtang. And if you watch the first Haggarty fight and you watch the first round and you're like, Rodtang's kind of playing outside of his comfortable range here, because Haggarty's, winning these exchanges. But then you start to see Rodtang push through and realize that there's no real benefit in being too far away. And he starts this next fight with the same intensity as he walks out into the third round of their first one. He puts Haggarty under pressure straight away. He also had identified in that first fight that the body shot was a vulnerability that he could work. So he invested in the body shot again. Okay, this is first round. I mean, these guys have literally just started. This looks nothing like their first fight. Like, Rodtang is banging. He is coming out ready for war in the first round. Let's have a look at this. I mean, straight away to the body shot there. Dips, bang, big body shot. Haggarty buckles a little bit, bounces back. But then Rodtang eats that space up a little bit, lifts his knee, and then attacks again. Left hook to the body, right hand over the top. But the thing that's most important when you're watching this is not what he's throwing, it's how he's throwing it, which is nothing like the first round of their first fight. Let me say that one more time. Bang, bang. He's throwing with intensity, with aggression to try and force Haggarty back, to be impactful in the first round. Like, that body shot is just a thing of beauty. Same thing again. I mean, you throw a front kick to him, it's just bad news. It's bad news. That even hit him in the face. Same as always, Rodtang goes to catch the midsection, but Haggarty tricks him and catches him high, but is still able to catch the leg and cracks him with that left hook to the body. And then he goes down. And this is a horrible way to start a fight for Haggarty, because you're coming in to get your belt back. Here it is. Bang! And it's even the same hand that catches the kick, which is even more impressive. Goes to catch the midsection kick, gets caught in the face, but as the kick comes down, Rodtang's already caught it with his hand. And then he's going to let that go and dig that left hook to the body. And that follow-up shot was nice there as well. It just catches through the elbows. But I think the damage was done with the left hook to the body, to be honest. Bang. Look at that targeting. Lovely. Oh, and the pain on Haggarty. I know exactly how he feels. It is a horrible feeling, because you can't really do anything about it. Your head's going, I want to fight. I want to get up and fight. But your body's saying, there's no chance I'm standing up right now. And especially when you've got the referee standing there and they're counting you out. I mean, it's like everything in you is like, I want to fight, but your body just will not allow you to move, will not allow you to stand up. It's a crippling pain. Another beautiful example of Rodtang's experience. This is something you only see from really high-level Muay Thai guys, because they need to have practiced this a few times, and especially when you're fighting. This is a world championship fight. Watch this. Throws the kick, throws it again, catches it, jumps over the low kick, and Haggarty really fully commits that. He thought it was Christmas Day once he got that kick. You can see he's like, yeah, I'm going to get you back now. I'm going to get you back. And then straight over it. Even good defense is weaponized sometimes. Psychologically, like Haggerty now, he's like, what's going to get through with this guy? I can't deal with him at close range, and I can't do anything to keep him away. Like, all of these kicks that he was throwing, they're just bouncing off. Like, Rodtang's literally catching them like he's holding pads. But when he's closed into range, Haggerty's got nothing at close range that can hold him off. So then he starts digging those body shots. And the physicality of these guys, like Rodtang's body is built to throw power shots, whereas Haggerty's built to be a long range sniper. Doesn't mean he can't be powerful, but he's not genetically predisposed to be as powerful as Rodtang, just because you can see his build. I mean, look how thick his calves are. Now, and this was so frustrating for Haggerty, because he got dropped in that first round, and he's already been dropped twice in this round now, and he gets backed up to the ropes, and he tries to throw an elbow, and that was his mistake. I think we'll see a better angle in the replay, but like and you can actually see his corner man down here. He's actually shouting, "Move, move!" And he gets backed up against the ropes here. Rodtang comes right up the center there and misses. The right hand misses, and then Haggerty feels like he's in close range here, so he actually tries to attack with this elbow to the face of Rodtang. Watch this. He tries to catch Rodtang there, but unfortunately for him, Rodtang's already thrown the left hook to the body, and because he's moved this arm to elbow, he's opened up that solar plexus, which is the final punch that was needed. Let's watch this replay. I think we've got another replay of the left hook to the body. Oh, there we go. Bang, bang. Just rocketing these shots into the body. Lovely work. And to come in to defend your belt against the former champion, here's the shot. Right into the solar plexus. To come back in and face the champion a second time around, the former champion, and defend the belt that you won off him against him and stop him. Very, very impressive. And I think Haggerty will be back. You've got to think, the experience that Haggerty's got compared to Rodtang, this was a massive learning curve for him. And I'm expecting him to come back and get back into title contention. But Rodtang's a problem. Rodtang's a problem for everybody he faces, because he's just so powerful. You know what he's going to do, and he's going to do it anyway. So you've got to try and figure out a game that will hold him off at close range. I mean, I think Haggerty's next solution will be to use elbows. He seems to be doing a lot in training at the moment, and I would imagine he's got Rodtang in mind for some of those elbows. But even so, you've got to think with the amount of fights that Rodtang's got now. He's had 319 fights now. With the amount of experience he's got, he knows how to deflect elbows and to ride them as they're coming. There's lots of really, really nice tricks inside the pocket that you only get from really live work. And there's a benefit in starting at 8 years old as well. Like, Rodtang's first fight was at 8 years old. I think he'd had maybe 2 weeks of training before his first fight. But kids don't generally hurt each other too much, even if they're hitting with elbows. Stuff tends to bounce off kids a bit more. So you can learn a pretty brutal game before you go through you go through puberty and you get the testosterone to actually cause damage with your shots. So he probably had, I mean, how many? 40, 50 fights as a kid, maybe more than that, where he's just learning his craft on the go, but he's not really taking too much damage. He's also not able to put out a great deal of damage either. But great time to learn, especially with full Muay Thai rules. Okay, so he beats Haggerty. That was January 10th, 2020. His next fight was a rematch. This was a rubber match with Pechdam Pechindi Academy. A really skilled long-range Muay Thai fighter, similar in build to Haggerty, but more of a traditional Muay Thai pacing to him. A bit more hunched over, a bit more upper body work as well. But a talented, decorated, respected fighter. 98-7, I believe his record was. So they're 1-1 at this point. Rodtang's coming in. I think Pechdam won the first one. Rodtang won the second one. And this is the rematch. And Rodtang wins this one as well. Of course. July 31st, 2020. So you'll see the difference in pace with this fight. It's a little bit more kind of, we'll play at range, and Rodtang's kind of got Petchdem's number because they've faced off, so he knows his rhythm, he knows his preferred weapons, and he knows that pressure will ultimately get through because, again, he's got a tall, skinny guy who can't cover his whole body when he's under attack. So Rodtang starts throwing power at him. Now, this is something that Petchdem does really well, which causes Rodtang issues because when Rodtang's attacking, you've got to think that although his punches are quite tight, they're all coming with a loop on them, which means that if you're brave enough, when you see this punch coming, you can outside catch it, and when you see the next one coming, you can catch it outside, and you can use those kind of praying mantis hooks on the inside, which is what you see from Petchdem here. But he has to wait until he feels like there's an opportunity to do it, where he sees the shots coming in. Watch this. Oh, pressure. See, he's got that far side arm now. As Rodtang throws the right hand here, there, Petchdem loops it and catches it. Then the elbow comes, but now Petchdem's working inside, and now he's got both inside tie on Rodtang. This seemed to be a good way to control him, but again, it doesn't completely control him. And then you're into a knee trade with a guy that, because he's got such good body shot power, he's also able to transfer that to knees to the body as well. Really, really beautiful work on the inside as well. But, again, it got a minute. It took a minute to get these guys started because they knew each other well. And, this was a 5-round fight. We're not going to rush it here. Lovely long left hook to the body again. Nice little foot sweep, just like he used against Wilson in that first fight. Nice elbow there from Petchdem. But look again, the left hook and the barrage. And you can see his on wobbly legs there. And again, look at that. Watch how he slips to the side of this punch. Petchdem's going to throw that straight left, and Rodtang's going to slip it to the side and throws a counter hook on the inside. Catches Petchdem. Works that body shot. Works the right hook to the body. Left hook, right hook. Bang, big shot. And then you can see Petchdem doing the little dance because he's been rocked. You can see that lightning bolt dyed in his hair, does a little flick. Like, it often is the left hook that gets through, but you can't just cover the left hook because then he'll find something else. He'll keep investing in that body shot. There it is again. Then the hook comes over to the top of the head, and you can see Petchdem's wobbling again. I mean, just be trapped in the corner against the man. Lovely little elbow as well. You see how he did that? Throws the right hand, misses, catches him with the hand, and turns immediately and elbows across, with the back hand. But Petchdem's still working this inside tie. You can see how that's coming through and hooking over the top of Rodtang's arms. Quite problematic for him. I'd be interested to see if other people use that against Rodtang. I mean, some of these guys would rather trade knees with him than punches. Body shot. Hook to the head. Straight right. Catches him on the chin. Lovely work. That's where he stepped off and elbowed him. Another very impressive performance from Rodtang. Let's just roll straight into the next one, because his next one was 26th of February 2021. So the start of this year. This was in Singapore. Fists of Fury, the show was called. So Tagir Kalilov, 22-7-2. This was a kickboxing match. So obviously there's slightly different rule set. Not enough to really cause Rodtang any issues. And one thing that's more familiar with him in this one is he's got the bigger gloves on. So this is much more like his original Muay Thai days, where he's used to having those, a bigger guard, which allows him to walk his opponent down a bit more and be covered. But also he can just, he doesn't have to worry about catching his fists in awkward places because he's got a good solid wrap and a nice laced up glove. And I think it's 8-ounce glove he's got. It must feel like boulders hitting you. But again, same thing, pressure, left hook, low kick, body shot, left hook, nice and shadows him all the way in. And then again, the psychological games start to come in because Rodtang's now just able to take shots from this guy. Little dance, and then he jabs you. And see what else is Tagir gonna do here, right? He's just landed a few punches, and these were free shots. I mean, this is Rodtang just going, just have at it. Bang, 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 like he's trying to knock him out here. Little dance. And then Rodtang immediately stiffs him with a jab and then walks him down. But what else is he going to do other than cover? And this is where Rodtang gets his free shots. But it looks so much more dominant from the judge's perspective. The difference is Rodtang took a whole bunch of punches to the chin. Tagir took a whole bunch of punches on the guard. But the judges will see the dominant side of that exchange. Lovely left hook there. I think we just left it in slow motion here. Chops him down. I mean, a tough individual, took a lot of shots, but Rodtang, in whatever size gloves he wants, under pretty much whatever rule set he wants, he's going to be nightmares. And that was his kickboxing debut, and he's already called out whoever is holding the belt because he's game, and you know how he is. Like I said, this guy could be a 3-discipline champion in one. Imagine that. Kickboxing, Muay Thai, and MMA. If he wants to come and learn MMA, although Thailand's got some great places as well. So that was his career so far. His last fight, his most recent fight, was April 7th of this year. And that was against Daniel Williams. Another really talented, he was an Australian Muay Thai fighter with an MMA record as well. Lots of experience, tough dude, familiar with fighting in the small gloves as well, and had a very impressive record, 110, 40 and 2. He was a Lumpini Stadium champion. He's another really challenging individual for Rodtang to fight, but just ate him up, backed him up, cut him, beat him up pretty good in the first round and got a decent head on the scorecards, and then after that just kind of cooked him all the way to the distance. Great effort from Daniel Williams, but again, no one is really showing that they've got anything for Rodtang so far. The big challenge is for one to keep trying to find a matchup for him that's going to give him something new to get his teeth into. Now he's crossed over to kickboxing, that really opens it up, and I think one will be able to keep him a lot more active now. But I mean, just the pace and ferocity of this guy, not only when the fight's happening, but just generally as a Muay Thai fighter. 23 years old, 267 wins, 42 losses, and 10 draws. 319 fights total. Very, very impressive. Widely considered to be the number one Muay Thai talent on the planet right now, which is incredible. I hope you've enjoyed this. Go and watch some of his fights. See if you can spot any of these things yourself and spot those patterns and see how he's using them. And if you see some other stuff that you like that you've seen, then send it over, because I'm always looking to learn myself. This has been an absolute pleasure to watch this, to research Rodtang, and I am watering at the mouth for his next fight. Let's put it that way. Thank you. I'll see you next time.